Hello everyone, my name is Reagan and welcome to today's video. I normally do book content and today's going to be another book video. Today we're going to be doing part 1 of my January wrap up. Not part 1 like there's another video, but like I'm filming this in 2 parts. I'm currently at home and I have a lot of my physical books that I read in January here. And then when I go back to school, the books that I have there, I'll be filming the second part, this wrap up with all the physical books I read there. Normally I do my wrap ups where I start with the first book that I read in January and then I end with the last book I read in January, but this is going to be a little bit mixed up. The physical books I have here are just out of order and it's not going to work to do it step by step. January's not over, it's the 28th, so I do have a few more days. I know for a fact I'm going to finish at least one more book in January. So far in January, I think I've read 16. I'm going to be finishing another one, so I'm going to make it to 17. That's the most books I've ever read in a month. I guess let's just get into the books. I read Mile High this month. This is the first book in the Windy City. Oh my gosh, the sun's going like behind a cloud so that I know the lighting just changed in here. This is the first book in the Windy City series by Liz Tom Ford and they are sports romances. I ended up rating this a 3 stars. Typically people's least favorite in the Windy City series. This follows Xander and Stevie. Xander's is a professional hockey player and Stevie is the flight attendant for that hockey team's private airplane. That's how they kind of meet. Xander's has this playboy image and people tend to think he's kind of an asshole. He's known for bringing different girls home every night. He's like the bad boy of the NFL. The NHL. This does not faze her. She just does her job, works around him, and he's very intrigued by this. I think it was too long. By page probably 300, I was like, okay, we can wrap it up now. The MC is kind of an asshole, and people say that a lot. They were like, I DNF'd this book because of how insufferable the male main character was, and I agree. I just pushed through and it was okay. Sometimes I just like turn a blind eye to that in some romance books, and that's what I did here. Definitely be aware that he's just kind of a bad dude, but I think the reason why I didn't DNF is because I'm in like my dark romance, I don't want to say era, like low-key era. A mean male main character wasn't really phasing me at that point. I pushed through it. I gave it a 3 stars. I would recommend if you want to get to the rest of the series, specifically this one, if you want to, I would say do it. If you don't, you're not missing anything. Next I read Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This is one of my favorite reads in the month. I read this in one day, one sitting. I ended up reading this 4 stars. I binged this. If you don't know, Ali Hazelwood is a romance author. She typically does STEM romance. She is one of my favorite authors, and this is her first YA novel. This follows Mallory Greenlee, who used to be a big chess prodigy, and then her father dies and she has kind of stopped playing chess to take care of her family. Noah Sawyer is the current world chess champion, and when she ends up playing him one day in a local tournament and beating him, she's the only person who's ever beat him. He becomes obsessed with her. This gets her a lot of media attention and is thrust back into the world of chess. Nolan Sawyer is kind of the person who's making chess hot because he's attractive. He's on TikTok. It was so cute. I loved it. Sawyer was kind of like the misunderstood grump, the misunderstood chess player, and he was adorable. And like I said, Mallory, she's the current caregiver to her family. I love the plot with her family. People say this is really slow, but honestly, it went by so quickly for me. I was never bored. I was on the edge of my seat. The romance was perfect. The slow burn was amazing. A critique that a lot of people give this book is that it doesn't really feel YA and it's inappropriate for the YA genre. And I personally would disagree with that statement. YA is young adult from years 12 to 18, and you can't tell me that having sexual content and not explicit, these were fade to black, closed door, we didn't really even see anything. The YA genre has a lot of that, and 12 to 18, at least for me, to me, sexual content is not out of the realm of 12 to 18 year old. That is when people are discovering themselves, their sexualities and stuff like that, and I think that's appropriate to portray in a YA book. I think it's important to portray in a YA book to show that characters are also going through that. And so I don't think that this is not YA. I think this is appropriately YA. Maybe on the higher age range of YA, like maybe a 12-year-old shouldn't read this, but 12 to 18 is a very vast age range within YA. Obviously, you have to be careful what you read, but generally, I think this does fit in the age range of YA. Unpopular opinion there, but I read YA from like when I was 12 to 18. I read ACOTAR when I was like 14 years old. Maybe that distorts my judgment, but the ACOTAR books were in the YA section when I was reading YA. I think that this is appropriately YA. And if the publishing industry also thinks so, then I think it's fine. This had me giggling and kicking my feet, dude. It was so fun, so cute. This cover is adorable. A great, great debut YA novel for Ali Hazelwood. I would say the reason I didn't give this a 5 is that it was a bit forgettable. While I was reading it, I was like having all those 5-star feels, but then the day after I was like, I'm not thinking about this book. So that's why I did rate it 4 stars. Ali Hazelwood, you've done it again. I love Ali Hazelwood's writing, and this is no exception. I loved it. Next, we're talking about Once Upon a Broken Heart. This was a reread in the month of January. This is by Stephanie Garber, and this is the companion series to the Caraval trilogy. This is now a completed trilogy, and I am trying to finish the trilogy this year. It's one of my reading goals. I read Caraval when it came out, and I was like waiting for the release date of that, and so I was waiting for the release date of this, and I remember reading this, but I didn't remember anything about it. And years passed, I waited for the second book, I bought it, and then I never read it. Personally, there's a lot of debate on this, but personally I would recommend you read the Caraval series before you read Once Upon a Broken Heart. I think the Caraval series is better. I love Stephanie Garber's writing, so if you're just interested in this, whatever, it's up to you. If you don't know what this is about, this follows Evangeline and Jax. Jax was a character from the Caraval trilogy. Evangeline is heartbroken because the boy she loves is about to marry her stepsister. She visits Jax's temple. He's one of the fates. He's the Prince of Hearts, and he's cursed so that everyone he kisses will die, so he can't find his one true love. She begs for him to stop the wedding. Jax answers and he agrees to make a deal with her in exchange for 3 of her kisses. I had originally rated this 4 stars the first time I read it, but I changed my rating to a 3 stars. The reason being, it's just very forgettable to me. As I'm reading the book, I'm forgetting what has happened. Caraval trilogy was not like that for me, but I just don't remember or care, if I'm being honest. The fairy tale aspect is fun and the writing is beautiful, but I'm not compelled by the characters. Evangeline gets on my nerves. I can do a juvenile character that isn't very aware of themselves, isn't aware of the world, but Evangeline is aware. She just whines a lot. My main complaint is it's just forgettable, and I constantly forget the plot even though I've read it twice. But if you are interested, I would go ahead and read it. Finally read House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J Maas. This is the second book in the Crescent City series. I read this in preparation for the release of the 3rd book in the Crescent City series that's coming out on the 30th, I think. I rated it at 3.5 stars. So far, my least favorite book in the series, and probably one of my least favorite books from Sarah J Maas. I got both of the large plot twists spoiled to me. The end is crazy. I don't know if I liked the ending, and I really don't think the spoiler affected my rating of the book. The main reason I rated this at 3 stars, not that it was bad. A 3.5 is a good rating. It's one of the lowest ratings I've given a Sarah J Maas book. The sheer size of this book, for it to be boring, is heinous. Like, you can't give me a book that's 800 pages, have me be bored for 600 pages of it, and then the end 200 are like the craziest thing ever. I admire Sarah J Maas for her crazy plot twist, but at the same time you have to keep me hooked throughout, and this book was just boring. I've said this in one of my vlogs that I've done. This felt like Sarah J Maas wrote a book, gave it to her editor, and her editor was like, wow, we don't need to change anything. It's perfect. I think a lot could have been cut. I just feel that this was too long with not enough action throughout to make it worth it. Next, we're gonna do a vibe switch completely, and we're gonna go over the 3 Bridgerton books that I read this month. I am getting through the Bridgerton series. This is number 3 in the series, I believe. This is An Offer from a Gentleman. This follows Benedict Bridgerton and Sophie Beckett. Benedict is one of the older Bridgerton brothers, and this is like low-key Cinderella inspired. Benedict meets this girl at a masquerade ball. Her name is Sophie Beckett. She's actually one of the daughters of an earl, I think. Her stepmother makes her basically be a slave in her house, and she finally escapes one night to go to this masquerade ball. She meets Benedict Bridgerton. They have a little moment, and then she disappears, and he cannot stop thinking of her. He's trying to find her everywhere, but is unsuccessful. They meet again many years later. Sophie is aware that it's Benedict, but Benedict is not aware who Sophie is. I binged this in one day. These books are just a great change of pace. Face. I rated this one specifically 4 stars. I think it's one of my favorites in the series. Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. This one follows Penelope and Colin. The secret is revealed in this one on who Lady Whistledown is. Honestly, this is probably one of my least favorites in the series, and we're about to get their Netflix story, so I'm excited to see that and how they adapt this book, so I'm glad I read the book first. I was so excited for Colin and Penelope. Penelope was just kind of like whiny, and I get why she was whiny, but like, girl, stand up for yourself, have some confidence. And then Colin was just like rude and annoying and mean. I did rate this a 2 stars. I obviously continued on with the series because then I read To Sir Philip with Love. This is the 5th one in the series, I believe. This has one of my favorite epilogues in the series. This follows Sir Philip and Eloise Bridgerton. Eloise has been sending letters to Sir Philip after his wife passed for a year, and Sir Philip proposes that she comes to his estate and they kind of feel it out, see if they're equipped to marry. Sir Philip has 2 children who are like menaces. They're crazy, and he's looking for a mother. I wish there were more letters, like the whole To Sir Philip. I wish there was more of that content in the beginning rather than we kind of just jumped to her going to see Sir Philip. I wish we saw more of their build up in their letters. It was a unique storyline though. I ended up rating this a 3 stars, and it had one of my favorite epilogues in the series because all the book include the extended epilogues now. This one kind of falls in the middle of the series for me. The next 3 books I have to show you are part of a series, part of the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. I've read 4 of these books this month. The 3 that I have here with me are the ones I'm going to talk about first. The Never After series starts with Hook, and they're all interconnected standalones. They're all inspired by fairy tales. They're not retellings, but they're all inspired by them. So the first one, Hooked, is inspired by Peter Pan. The second one, Scarred, is inspired by The Lion King. Wretched, which is a Wizard of Oz, and then Twisted, which is inspired by Aladdin. Instead of the prince being the love interest, the villain is the love interest. We're just gonna go through in order. The first one I read this month, I randomly on a whim picked it up on audio, and it was Scarred by Emily McIntyre. I rated it 4 stars. I was addicted to this book. Definitely my favorite in the series. This follows the scarred prince, or Tristan Fossa, obviously Scar from The Lion King. And then we have a Lady Sarah Beatrice, which is Simba's mother, basically. This is set in like an old-timey setting. There's still kings, there's a village. These are all dark romances, if I haven't said that. They're not like the best dark romances ever, but I love a fairy tale inspired book, a fairy tale retelling, and these, they're like crack, okay? I loved the MMC in this book. Is he a terrible person? Yes. Does he kill people? Yes. For the fun, for the plot, for the entertainment value, he was my favorite. The kind of like rebelliousness of this book, I loved it. I ate up the plotline with Simba because Simba is in this book, and Tristan kind of acts as like a father to him, and it's so cute. Wretched, which is Wizard of Oz inspired. I'd say maybe this is one of my least favorite in the series if I had to rank them. I rated this 3 stars, so not bad, just not my favorite. So this follows Evelina Westerly, unsure who she's supposed to be. The Wicked Witch of the West, maybe? And then we have a Nicholas Wordsworth, which I thought was going to be a Tin Man. Now I'm looking at him, the last name is giving Scarecrow, so like I'm a little unsure of the character arc there. This is a bad girl, good guy trope. Nicholas, he's an agent. Where they're having a lot of issues with the mob, and so Nicholas is assigned to go undercover and find the mob supplier for this drug called Flying Monkey, which I kind of liked that name, it was funny. Evelina Westerly runs a drug den. She is the supplier. She's like a botanist girly. It was good, but like the good boy, bad girl has to be done in a very specific way. And I just don't know if this was my favorite portrayal of that. But it was fun. Twisted by Emily McIntyre. I rated this one at 3 stars. Aladdin inspired dark romance. This was an age gap because obviously it was between Jafar and Jasmine. We have Yasmin Karam. Her dad is this jewel titan. Like he has an empire of diamonds basically. And Julian Faraci is like his right-hand man. Yasmin's father is dying, and his last wish is for her to find a husband. Long story short, Julian Faraci ends up blackmailing Yasmin into marrying him instead of the Aladdin boy that she was trying to marry, or Aiden. This book could get a bit boring at times. I like how Aladdin was included because sometimes in the others, like some characters are taken out for a smoother plot line, but Aladdin was included in this. However, Aiden, or Aladdin, he was really annoying. So like I like that he was included, but could he have been a little bit less annoying? That would have been great. Thank you. 3 stars. Not my favorite in the series, but binged it. Still a fun time. Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. I have had this on my TBR forever and ever, so I'm glad I got it off. Anyways, this follows Francis Janvier and Aled Last, and they have formed a friendship, an unlikely friendship. Francis is this head girl, really school-focused person, and Aled is that at a all-boys school personality that they show at school, but secretly have like their weird interests, their quirks. Really love the friendship. I loved how friendship was portrayed in this book and how there was a platonic friendship and it was never more than that. I also loved the exploration of sexuality. This did have a lot of good representation. Sorry, my neck itches and I'm trying not to itch it because I know it's going to turn red in a second and it's gonna look like I got like slapped. I had a hard time relating to some of it, partly because of age range and partly because some of the stuff in this book like I just personally cannot relate to. So I can see how a lot of people love this book and it connects them so deeply. It didn't have that emotional connection for me. I thought the writing was good. I liked the podcast element. It was good. I just didn't relate to it. I didn't have a lot of feelings towards it. So I rated it 3 stars. I read King of Greed by Anna Huang. This is the 3rd book in the Kings of Sin series by Anna Huang. The Kings of Sin is not my favorite series, but I will say this was my favorite book in the series so far. I rated this 3 stars. This follows Alessandra and Dominic, which we've seen a little bit in the previous books. Alessandra and Dominic are married, but their marriage is in peril. Alessandra is just not happy in the marriage, and Dominic is so unaware. He's just like a workaholic, go, never sees his wife, and so she leaves him. So we have the marriage in peril trope. Dominic's trying to win her back. I like how he immediately kind of realized, oh, I messed up. Immediately realized that he had messed up and he had lost someone important to him, and he went to go get her back. I really appreciated Dominic, and I think that's why this book was one of my favorites in the series, but it was still just meh. I just don't think this series is ever going to produce like a really good book for me, but it was like decent, and I am going to continue on with the series. Cruel Seduction, I rated this 2 stars. This is by Katie Robert. This is one of the books in the Dark Olympus series. They've progressively gotten worse as we go. This one I rated 2 stars. This is a polyamorous relationship between Hephaestus, Pandora, Adonis, Aphrodite / Eris. In this series, we have basically New York is Olympus, and the 13 are the 13 ruling gods. If you're scared about the Greek mythology aspect, I wouldn't be. It's very forgettable, and it wasn't as smutty as I thought. The first one was like really smutty. You were getting 4 POVs in this. Some characters were less developed than others. And lastly, we have another reread, Throne of Glass. I rated this 4 stars. Follows an assassin named Selena Sardathian. She gets chosen to compete in this tournament for the king to become his assassin. I forgot how much I liked Selena as a main character. She's such a strong female character, just a very developed character that I loved. I did refall for the romance. I'm not going to say anything more about that. I forgot a lot of the plot lines, so like I was surprised. Basically, we're here to do the rest of my wrap up for January. I have 3 more books to show you. Today's the 31st, so it's the last day of January. I'm not expecting to finish any books today, so we should be fine. I need to talk to you about Crossed by Emily McIntyre. This is the 5th and final book that is out in the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. I ended up rating this at 2 stars. I'd say it was probably one of my least favorite books in the series. I already explained to you how all the Never After books work, but this final one was inspired by The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'm not super familiar with this story, so I think that made it harder for me to connect to the fairy tale aspect of it. This followed Father Cade. Like, I don't even know their names in the original story, so I can't tell you the real character's name, but he's like the old priest guy. And Amaya. And Amaya works as a stripper. Her stripper name is Esmeralda. Father Cade is new in this town, cleanse the town of its sins, and he discovers Amaya and becomes obsessed. I would say this is also the darkest of the series. Like, the main character was maybe the least forgivable to me. We find out pretty quickly that Cade regularly he just does people was like the least forgivable of the men in the series for me, because his was really for no reason, I felt. Obviously, there's a religious aspect in here because we have the Catholic Church of Notre Dame. First, I didn't really like it, but it did grow on me. I would recommend the entire series. This one is probably one of my least favorites. Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. This is a part of a ginormous series, and it follows aliens. It's alien smut. I filmed a reading vlog on this, and I rated this 4 stars. My first note that I wrote about this book was, why am I loving it? I still feel that way, the way that the second book is arriving today. Like, I ordered the second book after I finished this one. This special edition included the main book, the extended epilogue, and Ice Planet Honeymoon, which was like a second. Oh my god, my The second book of this one just arrived. I just got a notification for it on my phone. The main book was a 4 stars for me, and then the extended epilogue and Ice Planet Honeymoon, those were 3 stars. This follows Vectel and Georgie. So Georgie is a human girl from Florida, and one day she gets abducted by these mean aliens. She's on the ship with a bunch of other women, and they've kind of deduced they're basically gonna be slaves wherever they're taken. The ship has like a little breakdown, and the aliens are like, okay, we're gonna drop the cargo, the girls, on this inhabitable planet and pick them up later. They are trying to survive. Georgie is voted like the leader of the group, and she's tasked to go find food and intelligent life, so she ventures out. Vectel ends up accidentally catching her in his hunting trap and finds out that they are mates. It is goofy, it is funny, it made me giggle. I loved it. I'm finishing the rest of the series. That's all you need to know. If you've ever had an interest in reading these books, I would say do it. Like, they're actually very enjoyable. First Light Wins by Ashley Elston. This is a mystery thriller. My first mystery thriller finished of the year. I've been seeing a lot about this. This is a new release, I believe. Basically, we're following a con artist, and we get the past perspective and the present perspective. The past are her past jobs, infiltrates these families or these groups of people to extract information, and in her present, she's in a job currently, and she starts to get a little bit too attached. Starts to think that her boss put her on this job for a different reason than she suspected. She's often in these rich client environments, so I like the rich people drama of it all. I like the characters, and I like that there was kind of a love story inside there. It kept me very interested. I wasn't ever bored. I was underwhelmed. I guessed the plot twist, I would say 50 pages into the book. I don't know. I was just very underwhelmed. I was like, oh, so I was right. Glad I purchased it, and I'm glad I read it, but I think out of all the thrillers I've ever read, being like maybe 5, this is one of my least favorites. I rated this a 3 because it wasn't bad. I think it was just predictable. On to whatever outro future Reagan did. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Reagan. Again, I do a lot of book content. If you'd like to check out any more of my stuff, you can go check it out on my channel down below. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I love you all. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.